I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, August the 10th, brought to you in part by the Western Video Market Sale in Old Cheyenne at Little America, one of my favorite places right there. Coming up on Monday and Tuesday, August the 14th and 15th. Got over 100,000 head on offer, guys. Huge sale. Starting at 8 o'clock in the morning Central Time. A lot of yearlings still left in the country. Many big streams be on this sale coming from Colorado and Wyoming, close to the corn. You think they might be all gone, but there's a lot of big yearlings out there, guys, and they would be top quality. A lot of lightweight cattle coming from Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. And then some later fall deliveries for you California grazers. Don't miss this sale. You can check out the lots and the videos at wvmcattle.com. Interest for thee. And on Wednesday I had an opportunity to have a nice long visit with one of my favorite old friends and contacts that I don't get to see anymore very often, but we had a good long visit on Wednesday, and the only thing that was missing was a 4 or 5 drinks apiece that would be sweating on a table in between us. But he knows a lot more about the industry than I do. He's got a lot of old stories, and I miss hearing those, and he always gets my mind kind of scattered in 100 different directions, but it's sure good to talk with him. And you know, so many things in the industry are like a catch-22. You know, if you don't take care of your calves well enough, they're going to get kind of haggard and they're not going to look as good, and they may not sell well. If you take too good a care of them, you creep them too much, they get fleshy, they're going to look fat, and they're not going to sell well. You know, it's just things like that happen over and over. You know, I buy really good feeder cattle, big square made feeder cattle. They're heavy muscled, they don't grade very well, they don't quality grade very well. You know, I can buy some plain cattle that are light muscled, get them fat, they quality grade pretty well, but they're all yield grade 4s and 5s. It's just the industry in itself is a catch-22 like that, and I've been kind of thinking about putting together a presentation about that and kind of working on it. But what's going on right now is this interest is taking the fun out of things. For several years we went along there, of course all through the Trump years. That's why so many of us loved it. But you know, interest was barely anything. You know, you didn't worry too much about interest. You know, somebody give you a check for your calves, it might ride around on your dashboard for a couple, 3 days before you put it in there. Not anymore. This interest is adding up fast. You know, since the pandemic, since the Magoo administration come in, and all this inflation, this interest is getting out of hand. And in most cases, it's closer to 10% than it is 5%. And I don't care how good a credit you got, or how many deals you've seen your banker do that he doesn't want you to disclose. It's getting up there, guys. And how are people fading that? Well, the market's great right now. You know, the markets took care of everything. You could have screwed up over the last 8 or 9 months, no big deal. You couldn't hardly screw up bad enough not to come out smelling like a rose over the last 8 or 9 months for sure. And I think we got another 1 year for sure, and probably 2 years of good times to go in the forward. But then after that, it's going to get tough. You know, it just does. That's the way it is. And of course, next year and the year after aren't going to be as great, because everybody knows how good the market is, and you can't replenish those cattle, especially if you're backgrounder or feeder. You can't replenish those cattle as affordably as you could have, you know, this last roundup. But you know, how are these guys fading the interest? And especially now that these big feeders, I mean, a feeder steer with any size to him is going to cost over $2,000 a head. That adds up, and the interest on him adds up after a while. How are people fading this interest? It reminds me back whenever I first started with USDA, or not first started, but I got my first officer in charge office. I was a man in charge of a one-man office, big deal. But I was out in Northeast in Pennsylvania, just back west of Philadelphia ways, in Lancaster County there, and the Pennsylvania Dutch region there, and I reported markets on every single species of livestock that we had grades on, every one of them. Slaughter calves, veal calves, dairy cattle, everything, and got well educated out there doing that. But one of the best educations I got was from one of my favorite people that I've met in the industry going along. His name was Kenny Wanger, and some of you guys would remember him. He was old when I knew him. He didn't live much longer than after I left Pennsylvania, but I used to sit with him at the Lancaster stockyards, which have long been torn down now, and then he moved to Vintage Sales, and he was always keeping track of cattle, and I knew that he didn't feed cattle because he had loafers on when he came in the sale barn, but he would sell his fat cattle on Mondays, maybe Tuesdays, and then the rest of the week he would spend down in Virginia buying feeder cattle. And I didn't really understand how it all worked, but Kenny had a financing deal going there, and he would finance people to feed cattle, and he would get commission on both ends, get buying commission on one end. He would charge them maybe a point or two over prime, and then get a seller's commission on the other end. And then he was even smarter than most that do it today. He was getting another commission from the commission firm or the sale barn to bring his cattle to their sale. So things were going pretty good for Kenny. But he kept track of everything. He had a brilliant mind. He could add a string of numbers, a buyer's card long in his head, no problem. And he was in his 80s when I knew him. But he lived a unique life, and I learned a lot about the industry from Kenny. The more I went along, the more how I found out that this is not out of the ordinary. A lot of outfits do this. It's the only way really that young people can get into the industry. Now they're still going to have at least some place to turn some cattle out or to put some cattle. But if you've got that, you've got the willingness to do it, you've got the ability to do it, and you're not lazy, you can find people that will finance you to run cattle. And maybe even go out and lease some pasture and do that. Of course, they're going to take most of them are going to take some commission on the front end and some commission on the back end, and they may tell you how you're going to market them, but it'll get a young guy started. And there's a lot of outfits that do that. Now, as I'm talking about that, I'm thinking about the big difference between the Northern Plains selling cattle at 188 or 190 and the Southern Plains selling cattle at 178 or 180. And you think, well, it's the big corporates, and they're always not necessarily cussing, but just talking about the big corporates, especially in the Southern Plains. And you guys think, well, I'm sure Cactus and Freona and Green Plains get tired of that kind of stuff. They don't really care. But it's everybody. It's not just them. It's everybody in the Southern Plains has got a sweetheart deal. What I would like to know is what level of financing are these feedlots in the Southern Plains getting from their packer partner? If I'm promising you my cattle, and I guarantee you that these big packers, they know what feeders that these feedlots, their partners that are in a formula deal with them, they know what they're getting in, and they know what their weights are, and if they're weighing 800 or 900 pounds, they know that in 150 days, those cattle are going to be available on a show list. They're keeping track of that show list from the cattle that they've already got spoken for. What level of financing do they have to put up for that? I would say that it is considerable. And I may be completely washed up, but I think it's probably considerable. I think that is one of the things that kind of levels the playing field for the guys in the Southern Plains that are selling at such lower prices. Now the Northern Plains, You know, you don't see the Southern Plains guys, you know, out in the Flint Hills, you know, swinging fists and running their wheels off their pickup, trying to buy those best performing cattle. They can't afford them. They're not going to buy those high dollar cattle like that. They're not even going to get close to them. They're not going to be on Western video for the most part, buying those big fancy ranch raised yearlings and things like that. They're just not going to. They're going to find some more commodity type cattle to feed, keep the cost down as much as they can, including the interest, including their investment, and then they're going to use their management skills to try to make those cattle perform as well as they can and to try to keep them alive. But the Northern Plains feeders, they are having to stretch out. It's getting to the point now where they're just having to assume that they're going to have a $5 to $10 basis to work with whenever their cattle come ready to go to the packer. Because if they don't, they won't hedge. They won't even get close to hedging. A lot of them don't hedge even if you figure in $8 basis there. But that's the only way that is working, guys. And it's just something to think about, not trying to prove a point by any way or means, but just visiting about the industry on a slow news day. Let's talk about your board for Wednesday. August live cattle futures up 87 cents at 180.57. October up 80 cents at 181.70. Your back months were all up, but not much, up 7 cents to up 50 cents. August feeder cattle are up $1.15 at 247.15. September up 120 at 250.62. And your back months on feeder cattle all up pretty decent from 42 cents to 92. We were needing to get some of that back because we had lost ground earlier in the week for no reason. December corn new crop down 4.5 cents at 494.25. New crop November beans up 2.5 cents at 1308.5. Now you see that your corn and your beans have really settled down now, and the crop is for the most part made. Now we had some really good moisture through the bulk of the corn belt there a week or two ago. That kind of finished it off right there. That pretty much made the corn. Now we're just waiting for it to mature, and so now we're starting to see your corn and beans start really moderating a little bit on their volatility, and I think it's helping the cattle market out some too, because we're not really scared unless we get some kind of a big hailstorm or something that comes through. We're not scared about corn jumping back up to $7 a bushel or something like that. Your Kansas City hard red winter wheat for September down 9 cents at 761.5. Fat cattle trade started to trade a little bit in the Northern Plains. It's exactly like I told you on our last visit, long about Wednesday. You don't see anything on Monday or Tuesday, but a fat cattle sale here and there. On about Wednesday, you start seeing a few guys sell, and if they sell at steady money like they did this week, it's different than a lot of times. You can hope for a higher market. The steady money's out there on a Wednesday. If the steady money's out there on a Wednesday, I think your packers are likely going to give another buck up or so. But if you see guys start bailing at lower prices for some reason, and I think we're lucky with the steady, with the board being down Monday and Tuesday, but coming back pretty strong on Wednesday. But I think we're in for a pretty decent week. You know, there's no need to even look at Kansas or Texas until Friday afternoon sometime. But Iowa sold 2,300 head on Wednesday at 188 live and 295 dressed. Absolutely steady. Nebraska only 600 head, maybe a few more after the 2 o'clock deadline, but 188 live and 295 to 298 dressed. Not too bad, guys. For the guys that are wanting to sell, didn't want to haggle all week and wanted to go ahead and get their cattle sold up. Box beef cutout values showed some support on Wednesday. Choice cuts 303.52 up $1.13. Select up 198 at 278.14. Slaughter running pretty close to par, 369,000. That's just 2,000 less than last week and 1,000 less than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Livestock Risk Services That's Dakota Moss. I tell you what, there are no dumb questions. And I know Dakota Moss, he would not ridicule anybody or think twice about him if you called with any question about LRPs. He'd be glad to answer it for you, and he can definitely answer any question that you have. Just give him a call, and there's no dumb questions, but you could absolutely feel dumb one of these days when they pull the rug out from under this market if you don't have some protection, guys. And you can get it right there with LRPs. Get a little bit of government help there with the policy, and be covered up, and you can sleep at night, guys. But check out Livestock Risk Services. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV Auction late in the day on Wednesday, after all the trade on Wednesday, based on an 800-pound steer up through the middle 12 states, cash auction steer, up 97 cents at $245.95. Now Bassett, Nebraska had a sale. That's one thing that helped your index a little bit there, and it always does. But check out Mocan Livestock Market in Butler, Missouri. My friends, the Herzogs there, and they've got the Herzog Meat Company, and you've heard me tell stories about them many times before. But they're getting so busy. They built them a new feeding facility there close to the sale barn. They've got their little packing plant there. They've got a deal with Springfield Grocery. I mean, they are got their oars deep in the water. The boys are working hard. Jim, I don't know, but Jim is he's overseeing the deal. But he's decided to kind of take a step back from the sale barn. Still ownership there, but he's brought the Wheeler family in there to help run that thing on the day-to-day decisions and things of the sale barn. I didn't think it would take that for them to get DV Auction in the barn, but evidently it has. But whatever the case, glad to have Mocan Livestock Market in Butler, Missouri on. And Thursday here is going to be the first day that they broadcast with us. Get a hold of them in the office there at Mocan. Get approved, and you can view and bid their sale from now on every Thursday. And then they have replacement specials as needed, and you can see those advertised too. Look at your big sales on Wednesday. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma had 6,900 head. Feeders were $2 to $4 higher. Calves were not well tested, but had a higher undertone where they were sold there. But a good sale in El Reno, and it's amazing that early in the week your feeders were not sure what to do. Of course, the board wasn't helping. Of course, the board's more down than it's up this week, but feeders are $2 to $4 higher in one of your well-tested markets there. Your national beef wire stick-out sale of the day was Bassett Livestock Auction in Bassett, Nebraska, which has added DV Auction broadcasting there recently, and we're glad to be a part of them. 2,900 head, not a huge sale, but they just have the best cattle in the world, and they get the biggest prices. That's just all there is to it there, guys. Look at this automated market report through Cattle Market Central, and look at your best tested weights, and they were pretty spread out through many weight groups there, but 158 5-weight steers averaged 556 with a weighted average price on all of them of $315.07. 236 head of 6-weight steers averaged 644, average price $296.81. Wow. 200 head of 7-weight steers averaged 753 with a weighted average price of $268 smooth. 190 head of 9-weight steers, didn't have many 8-weight steers, but 9-weight steers averaged 938 at $247.78. Look at the heifers. 235 head of 5-weight heifers averaged 555, weighted average price $284.04. 245 head of 6-weight heifers averaged 643 at $269.88. 176 head of 7-weight heifers averaged 719, weighted average price $257.43. 344 head of 8-weight heifers averaged 845, weighted average price $248.47, and 156 9-weight heifers averaged 933 with an average price of $239.26. Very, very impressive sale as usual. I'm not sure what they spiked to get the buyers so loopy this week, but They love the cattle out there. They did have a decent sized replacement offering. They had a load of bred heifers, weighed 10 1/4, bring $2,700 per head. They had 200 head of young bred cows weighing from 12 to 1,500, and they sold from $23.75 to $29.10 per head. Give you several individual quotes from all around. How about Coffeyville Stockyards, Northtown, up in Kansas there, Tylen Layton's barn. He sells 260 head string of 800-pound steers on the button at $251.35. How about Equity Cooperative in Waukon, Iowa? 63 Holstein steers weighed 777 at $211. How about Sterling Livestock Commission, Jim Santamasso? We talked about him on our last visit. He had several yearlings. We talked about them on a previous visit. They all sold well, including 209 head of steers weighed 951 at $242. How about Emporia Livestock Sales in Emporia, Nebraska, Emporia, Kansas? If any of you guys remember Buster Wheat, you remember why I say Emporia, Kansas. 55 steers weighed 919 at $245. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Wednesday in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Bassett Livestock Auction in Bassett, Nebraska. 84 steers weighed 639 at $310.50. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.